Welcome to the Bedrock Engineers Podcast, bringing you robot combat discussions for people who don't know what they're talking about.
It's carnage here in the Battlebots! Oh! Huge hit there! Now he's a fire-breathing dragon! Hey! Hold on! Woo! I feel like I'm in a scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre! Getting, we're gonna need a bot medic!
Here are your hosts, Ben and Scott. So we are here today to talk about episode 12 of Battlebots. I'm both a little toasty on beer going in as usual, and we will start with Minotaur versus Shatter. That's right, no front matter today. There's nothing really interesting to discuss. Actually, there kind of is. What did you think of this episode? Like
I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was horrible. I think it was okay to not quite good.
Yes.
It was okay.
There was a lot of lame fights.
Yeah.
The main event kind of saved it, but really the first and the last fight are the only ones that are really entertaining in much of any way, except for Witch Doctor versus Gigabyte. That was cool for about a minute, and then turned into a cripple fight, basically.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Anyway, now we'll actually start with Minotaur versus Shatter. Man, I was really hoping for Shatter to pull this out.
You know, Shatter seemed to move right into Minotaur's weapon every time.
Well, I mean,
just when they were in position, they would move. Let me get a little better for Minotaur to hit me.
Well, you got to keep your front to them.
You got to keep your front to them, but your front doesn't have to be facing Minotaur's front, and they would just move right into Minotaur's weapon.
That's true.
You know, I mean, a Minotaur wasn't even super maneuverable, and yet, you know, they just kept moving into their weapon, and then they didn't, even though their weapon seemed weak, it wasn't just weak, it wasn't, their timing was horrible, they weren't getting in their weapon.
What? What do you mean their timing was horrible? They landed a lot of hits.
They landed
a lot of low power hits.
They landed some hits, but they missed a lot of opportunities to land a lot more hits.
Well,
I mean, you have a hammer. You need to be hammering. I've said this over and over. And they missed a lot of opportunities, to hit them, and then their hammer wasn't very powerful.
It wasn't very powerful. It's because on that first, on Minotaur's first attack, they did manage to completely disable one of the weapon motors.
Okay.
And then after that, like when one of the weapon motors is done for, the other one can still swing the hammer fine, but it burns out the clutch really quickly, and it just got slower and slower.
It did.
Weaker, until eventually they got flipped and they couldn't self-right because the hammer just had no torque left in it, which was very sad. It was like if Minotaur was, I think, fortunate to have gotten that early hit in, right? Because I say that for two reasons. One, because it just took out Shatter's weapon, and two, and this still bothers me about Minotaur, they cannot stop popping wheelies. They didn't manage to get under Shatter again for 2 whole minutes.
Yeah.
As soon as they did, the fight was over. But
right.
But the fact that they got under them on the first try and then failed to get under them for 2 more minutes just kind of means, well, maybe they were a little lucky to have gotten that hit.
They're not very maneuverable. They pop wheelies. They can't turn very well. They just flip up on their side a little bit.
No, I think they turned fine.
Well, they kept tilting up on the side.
Well, yeah, but you can that's not really that big of a problem.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I consider it a problem because you don't turn that well. You flip up on its side. I mean, Shatter, man. I like the way they can move, but they didn't use it to their advantage.
Yeah, they didn't seem quite as well controlled in this fight as they were.
Slide to the side and hit them. Slide to the side and hit them.
Slide to the left. Slide to the... No.
Yeah, man. I mean, you got that maneuverability. The first slide they did was slide right into their weapon. Boom!
Lots of pretty sparks, though, from Minotaur grinding up against that titanium wedge.
Minotaur definitely chewed on them all over. Minotaur was all over them as good as Minotaur could be. And then finally got a big hit, and that was it.
That was it, yeah. I think Shatter did about as well as they could have. It's a shame that their hammer wasn't working at any point, but... it's fair because it's Minotaur that did that damage. They didn't go into the fight not working, so good.
So Minotaur came into this fight 2-3, right?
2-3, and now they're even. And it's good to see them at least finish even rather than, negative, because this is Minotaur we're talking about. And I like Minotaur, and I want to see them do well. But I like Shatter more, so I was rooting against Minotaur.
Shatter certainly looked good, and certainly got, parts just ripped right off, man.
Yeah. And titanium sparks just look really nice.
Yeah, they do.
Titanium sparks if you tap it. And I've actually seen titanium getting water jet cut. It sparks while that's happening.
Does the cheap Chinese titanium spark really well? Or is it just the really good titanium?
The cheap titanium is used in the Chinese titanium is used in fireworks, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and pyrotechnics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm obviously kidding, but yes. Would you like to just go ahead and move on to Son of Waiachi versus Kraken?
Sure. I mean, I guess one more thing. I didn't even think Minotaur and Shatter was a great fight.
Really?
I thought it was a good fight, but I wouldn't say great.
I thought it was good. Yeah, I think I
Good.
agree with you there.
You think this was possibly the second best fight of the night?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is the thing I should probably touch on later is that the main events in this entire season, from episode 2 onward, from episode 3 onward. That's not how math works. The main events have always been either great or really good. And I'm so happy for that because last season, like I said, the main events were so often the worst fight of the episode, if not just an outright terrible fight. This season, they've all been great, aside from 2.
Yeah.
And then even in the one episode that didn't have a main event, that being the Desperado tournament, it was still the last fight that was the shining diamond in the rough of that terrible, terrible episode.
Yeah.
And this episode is no exception. So, heck, you know what? Whoever the new guy is that Discovery hired to pick the main events, keep him on the payroll.
Yeah.
Because he's making good decisions. So, should we go ahead and talk about Son of Waiachi versus Kraken?
Yeah, fight 2.
So, of course, I reacted to this matchup with confusion and shock, and I turned out to be absolutely right. What exactly were they thinking?
What do you mean?
When they put these two machines up against each other?
Well, are you saying that Kraken didn't deserve to fight Son of Waiachi?
I think they're good enough to fight a robot with Son of Waiachi's pedigree, but they have no anti-horizontal attachment at all. They just have that fork on the
But you're fighting robots, so you're not supposed to match them. For instance, if it's football, everybody plays everybody. If it's baseball, everybody plays everybody. Obviously, we can't put every robot against every robot, but I don't have a problem with it, man. I mean, what is exactly your problem with putting Kraken against Son of Waiachi?
Because it's Son of Waiachi. Like that's the highest energy horizontal or spinner of any kind in the competition.
But
period.
you shouldn't.
That's pretty harsh.
You shouldn't get a pass on fighting a tough robot.
Well, I mean, I think Rainbow would have made more sense because they're a horizontal that doesn't have the best win-loss record. They're 2-1, just like Kraken was going into this fight. Why not match
Kraken
them up
was
against
1-1?
Well, they had an unaired fight against Wanhu, which they won. So
they just when they put their record up on the screen, it was 1-1.
Was it maybe? Wait, really?
Yeah, I just watched it.
But yeah, Kraken, before the season started, we asked him, hey, do you have any kind of a wedge that you'd use against horizontals? And they said, no, we didn't quite have enough time to make one. But our plan, if we fight a horizontal, is going to be to angle I guess it's the underside of their jaw. I'm going to call it the fork for now. The fork directly into the path of the oncoming spinner so that it kind of slides up the tooth. And I could tell they were trying to do that in this fight and completely failing at it. And it's the right plan, but the thing is, you know what I think was happening? It almost looked like they thought Son of Waiachi was spinning clockwise, when in reality they were spinning anti-clockwise, because they kept going in at the exact wrong angle and just getting thrown around.
It didn't work. It certainly did not work.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw
them, they went right in and boom,
it just kind of got.
They kept walking into a punch.
You got a left hook, to their face.
4 big hits, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not much more to say other than that. I mean,
well, they were good. They were good hits.
Oh yeah, 4 big hits.
And then, despite not landing a direct hit on Kraken's wheel, they still managed to completely tear off Kraken's wheel.
Yeah, they did.
Just from the
Sanawachi's
sheer...
got some power.
Yes, even like they're not even spinning anywhere near the tip speed. Of course, it's like 190 miles an hour on that spinner, and it's just still so heavy that it has like 85 kilojoules in it.
Who beat Sanawachi? Was it Bite Force?
Whiplash. Beat,
Okay.
Sanawachi. Oh, if they fight Bite Force, that they're Sanawachi just R.I.P. Rest in peace. To them, Bite Force could not possibly lose that fight. I don't think.
Well, I don't have much else to say.
Well, Kraken just had no chance. Let's be real. Even if they knew Sanawachi was spinning counterclockwise and they were doing their idea correctly, it still couldn't have worked for long.
I don't know that their plan was the right plan.
I mean, that's the best you can do if you don't have a wedge. If you just have a fork, then it's like, yeah, why would you do anything else? Like, can you think of anything else? I can't. No. Well, I'm done as well with that fight. And then we move on to what is easily the worst fight of the entire episode in Railgun Max versus Wanahoo.
Yeah, I didn't think much of these robots, honestly.
I'm not that impressed with the Chinese drum spinner this year, honestly.
I mean, 2 hits and Wanhu was done. Belts flying off.
Mm-hmm. They tend to throw their belts a lot out of that weapon.
Yeah. And then shortly after that, Railgun Max weapon dies, and then it's just pushing each other around for a little bit.
Yeah, just a boring cripple fight. Somebody posted a pretty funny meme on Reddit the other day where it was like the first half of the fight, and then or rather the first like 30 seconds of the fight, and then the rest of the fight. And the first 30 seconds of the fight, it had a picture of these this painting of 2 Chinese dragons like battling each other, and then the rest of the fight, it was like I can't remember what it was. I think it was just like some old guy sleeping, which was basically the perfect analogy. Except that I don't even think I was enjoying the part where both their weapons were working.
No,
honestly,
Wanhu. I mean, whether their weapon was working or not, it's pointless. They didn't do anything with it.
Yeah,
and
that
took a whooping.
That Driscoll of theirs just doesn't seem to have any kind of power in it whatsoever. It's landed a few hits here and there this season, and it doesn't seem to really do any damage at all. And then they always throw the belts before the first 45 seconds are up. Yeah. So
I thought the translator, the guy that does the talking on Wanhu, I don't know, it looked like he looked a little miffed when the captain of Railgun Max said something basically about, this being the championship of China, the heavyweight championship of China. He looked a little miffed about that.
That's about all there is to really say.
I agree.
Yeah, it's just boring cripple fight.
Do you think Railgun Max should make it in the top 16?
No.
I honestly even though they're going to be 3 and
they're going to be at least 3-1. They're going to be at least 3-1.
They came in 2-0.
Yeah, but they're going to be at least 3-1.
You're already predicting a loss. Is that what you're saying?
Well, their next fight is against free shipping, so they're probably going to go 4-0. Let's be real. But
yeah,
that is of
right
course
now they're
3-0. That is of course
what
only
they're going
to
be. We don't know.
Yeah, then what they're going to be, we don't know. But there's a lot of 3-1 bots.
So, do you think they should be in the top 16?
I don't know. Like, they haven't really impressed me at all. Like, that's not to say anything for the people who actually pick this stuff, but they haven't. They don't really seem to be too good.
I would say at this stage, no.
Compared to the other wins.
Although I don't have a list of what I think the 16 robots that are better than them are.
Yeah. Me neither. Well, anyway, after that we got recaps of the unaired fights so far. What's funny, I can't even remember if P1 versus Sidewinder was in this segment, but I have seen that fight because that was a fight that the supporters got to see. And after, I told y'all that it was actually apparently a great fight. It was nothing. It had 2 good hits and then that was it. It was not a good fight. It's just one and done and that's it. But we got to see a lot of robots in here that we haven't even seen in the season so far, such as Battle Saw, the 4 Horsemen, Double Jeopardy, the one with the air cannon that I think we're going to see in the episode next time. So finally, jeez. But yeah, A whole bunch of them look like they suck. In fact, I'd say they all look like they suck. According to this section, Lucky had a win before they went into the Desperado tournament. And you remember how we were both confused over why the 0-1 Lucky was ranked lower than the 0-2 Ragnarok that lost in one hit by knockout? Turns out Lucky was 1-1. They had a win, and they still got ranked lower than Ragnarok. Why? Why?
Well, we were baffled at the ranking, at the seeding of the Desperado tournament.
That's preposterous.
It made no sense.
That's actually ridiculous that they did that. They basically just fed Lucky to Minotaur because they just didn't want. They were like, holy cow, Ragnarok's going to lose in one hit again. Let's make a somewhat interesting fight by having Lucky do it. They should have probably ranked Black Dragon number 1 then instead of Minotaur, honestly, because Minotaur was winless.
Well, in hindsight, of course.
Yeah.
But they should have at least ranked Black Dragon number 2.
Yeah, instead of number 3. Who was number 2 again? Was it Warhawk?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Remember.
That's whatever. Get away from me. That episode was bad. I don't want to think about it longer than I have to. Witch Doctor versus Gigabyte. Fuck.
7 big hits.
Holy hell. This was with their weapons slowed down a lot, keep in mind. That is a lot of engagement if that is the case. I mean, wow. Gigabyte got sent so high and like at least like 15 feet on that one
Those
hit.
are big hits, man.
Oof. It looked weird as well. Like it almost looked like it was happening in slow motion every time they got hit, because Gigabyte would just go up so gracefully and come down so gracefully, and of course neither one of us really likes Gigabyte all that much because it can't really self-right. They self-righted.
Well, they self-righted.
They self-righted like 7 times.
Yeah, man. Witch Doctor was on them, man.
Oh yeah. And Gigabyte's pulls did not
stayed
break.
on them.
Gigabyte's
it
pull
did
not break either. I was very impressed with that. I was very impressed
too.
with Witch Doctor's weapon. And then Witch Doctor's weapon, before the minute mark, it smoked and died again. And that's really the big problem I have with Witch Doctor this season, is that their weapon stops working in every single fight.
If their weapon had kept working, I think I'd probably say this was really the second best fight.
Oh yeah, if this had just happened for 3 minutes straight, this would have been like one of the best fights ever. There was one hit where, like, full body spinners do this thing, right, where when they're spinning and they get hit or they hit a wedge, they will pop straight up in the air and come straight back down without wobbling at all. Mm-hmm. And Gigabyte did that at one point while it wasn't spinning, which was the weirdest thing. Like, they were spinning, like they made one rotation. They drive away from the corner. They make one rotation. Witch Doctor hits them full on. They go flying, and they go their body remains perfectly level. Yep. Straight up, straight back down. How did that happen? That's not how physics work. I don't get it. It's very confusing. But yeah, and the fact that Gigabyte's shell took like no damage from all of that. They lost a tooth at one point on like the 7th hit. Okay. But it didn't look like
that.
Well, because the tooth was like dragging along the ground. Okay.
But
yeah, the shell looked absolutely fine. And considering, that huge, spinning forward and down, managed to tear big gaping holes in that shell. I know it's thinner on top, but still. Hits like that, like what Witch Doctor was dishing out, maybe that's just because Witch Doctor's, teeth are a lot wider, and therefore it's more of a blunt force uppercut than it is like a slicing thing like Huge's is, because Huge's bar is very thin. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pressure there. But, regardless, that massively impressive weapon performance from Witch Doctor. And, like, I don't know, like, just the fact that, okay, so Witch Doctor... after each fight, they haven't come up with this next one yet, but they make post-fight YouTube videos, right, where they explain how the fight went. And after each one, they said, okay, we decided to turn down the voltage on the weapon, more and more and more. And then after their last fight, which was against Whiplash, where their weapon again very quickly stopped working in a ball of smoke, they said in the YouTube video, this was our last attempt to fix that problem just by turning down the voltage, so we decided for the next fight to turn down the speed as well. And the exact same thing happened, so I don't know what they're going to do to fix that. But, Yeah, wow, that's a scary ass weapon if it can do this at a lower speed.
Witch Doctor came in at 3-0. Do you think Witch Doctor's in the top 16?
Well, considering that they're 4-0 now, yes. Yes, probably at the number 1 seed right now. Unless Bite Force goes 4-0, in which case they're going to be the number 1
So you
seed.
honestly think Witch Doctor should be seated ahead of Bite Force right now?
Well, just because Bite Force hasn't had its 4th fight yet.
That's not what I asked you. But, do you really think if you were seeding them, you would really seed Witch Doctor ahead of Bite Force right now?
Well, purely just because they're 4-0. Like, once Bite Force gets its 4th win, which I'm sure it will, then they're going to be seated ahead of Witch Doctor.
But you realize you need to consider the
This is tentatively, Scott. This is
realize
tentatively.
you need to consider the fights that they've had to get to.
Well, yeah, I know, but this is tentatively, though.
Okay.
It's until Bite Force gets its 4th win,
Okay.
Witch Doctor's ranked ahead of them, and so is Death Roll. In fact, actually, I think Death Roll...
that's crazy.
I think Death Roll should actually be ranked ahead of Witch Doctor just because they've had a much more impressive performance in all of their fights.
I think
First
that's
of all,
crazy.
they've gotten 3 knockouts instead of 2, and their weapon has never stopped working, so...
That's part of my point, for one.
Yeah.
I don't see how you can rank seed Witch Doctor at this stage ahead of Bite Force. I don't care the record.
Well, what if Bite Force somehow loses its next fight? Would you say that
You've told me that Bite Force won't lose any fights. But, I mean,
that's
different.
That's why I threw the word
different.
somehow in there.
That's different. Right now, Bite Force, in my mind, is ranked number 1. They just have to.
Well, yeah, but
they're the past champion. They're 3-0. They're undefeated. It's not their fault they haven't fought 4 fights yet. So,
in my opinion, you don't rank robots unless they've had all 4 of their fights. So, right now, as far as I'm concerned, Bite Force, yes, is in the top 16, but they have no seeding at all.
okay.
Not until they have their 4th fight.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway. I forgot about this fight, actually. Bloodsport versus Breaker Box.
I actually believe, this was barely better than Railgun Max versus Wanhu.
Barely better? Yeah. At least it ended in a knockout and wasted less of my time.
Yeah.
Breaker Box is...
These were weak robots, too, I thought.
Breaker Box is probably actually my least favorite robot of
I
the
agree with
entire
that.
season.
Bloodsport did tear off their lifter.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah. Why were they using that lifter instead of the regular wedge? That seems way better against horizontals. Apparently Jim wanted to be able to lift Bloodsport as well as deflect their hits. Why can't the other wedge do that? I don't get it. But yeah, I don't like Breaker Box at all. Like, I always complain. I always have a problem with people who don't like quote unquote boring wedge bots. But this is a boring wedge bot.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have good colors. And the fact that, like, literally, it has like a snot green color scheme on its sides, and then it's brown on the wedge and the arms. The fact that they've added the eyes is very bizarre to me. I don't get why there's eyes on the wedge. Like, I mean, there weren't eyes on the wedge in this fight, but there usually are. And it's like, it just doesn't, it's not as likable as Duck. It's not as reliable as Duck. For being a wedge bot, it sure seems to get killed really easily. And
It certainly did.
yeah, and the worst thing about it though is that Jim Smentowski went from Nightmare, the biggest and most impractical and yet hilariously awesome vertical spinner ever, to this, the most standard, simple, basic design you could possibly
Do you think he was influenced to go that direction by maybe the show or something, or do you think he just decided to do it on his own?
He just, so Breaker Box is a tried and true robot at RoboGames, but, we've talked a lot about how robots that do well at other competitions, especially RoboGames, sometimes do awful at Battlebots, and this is no exception. Breaker Box is great at RoboGames. They have not done well this season at all. They seem to just die after a few hits. They seem barely mobile for big parts of most of their fights. They barely beat Falcon by the skin of their teeth in a split decision, even though Falcon is, just a cheap experiment done by the Waiachi guys. Like, how cheaply can we make a robot and still have it win at least a fight? And yeah, I don't like it. I don't like Breaker Box at all. I think it's a really boring robot that doesn't even work.
We've talked a lot about how robots that came into this competition early weren't ready to go. Teams didn't seem ready to go. upgrades that we thought were going to be better weren't better.
Yeah.
We've theorized about all that, and I've started to wonder. This last week, I kind of really wondered, for instance, if maybe the show didn't give these guys as much time as they normally have to prepare. For instance, these other competitions, how long have they been scheduled? You know, if you were a competitor or going to enter, did you know about them a year in advance, 6 months in advance? You know, because when we did interview Copperhead specifically, those guys, you know, they mentioned that they got, you know, a call, boom, let's do it in, I think, 4 months or maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just wondering if what we're seeing, because we're seeing this across a lot of robots, a number of issues, you know, including robots not performing as well as they had in the past in other competitions. And I'm just wondering if maybe they really messed up by not giving these guys more time to prepare. You know, I would love to know in past seasons how long did they, you know, how much preparation time did they really have, you know? Were they notified 6 months, a year? These other competitions, the same thing, because you can't rush this. I mean, this is, you know, you're building something. Even if you came from another competition, even if it's the same old robot, I mean, clearly all of these robots get damaged in these fights. So, you know, I'm just curious. I mean, because we've gone around and around and around in this subject about upgrades not working as well, robots that had been good not being as good, teams, you know, struggling, all kinds of issues, weapons breaking routinely. I think we also lose sight of the fact that it is a very violent competition, very violent, you know, sport. I mean, you know, you compare it to something like football, and those guys are constantly getting hurt, you know. It's because, man, they're colliding with each other hard.
What are you talking about, man? There's no injuries whatsoever in the NFL.
I mean, it's, you know, it's a violent, you know, the more violence that's involved, the more damage you're getting done, you know, that's happening. So, anyway, I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, this should have been a free win, basically, for a robot with breaker boxes design, because you're against a horizontal as a wedge bot, which already that kind of tips the scale in your favor. But also, this horizontal spinner Bloodsport is really unreliable, and their weapon has never fully broken down in a fight before, but it constantly stops working and takes about 10 seconds to kind of stop cogging and get back up to where it needs to be. And it didn't even land big hits in this fight, and yet it still tore Breaker Box's arms off and leaving that really funny looking face on it. Like, that was cute. I like that. But yeah,
Breaker Box, Bloodsport their weapon seemed weak as hell, man. You talk about not beefy, you know, not looking stout.
They're not this season's Ice Wave.
It looked like sheet metal, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Granted, Breaker Box, wait, did I get this right? Bloodsport, okay, excuse me, I said that wrong. Breaker Box's lifter looked weak as hell, but Bloodsport didn't hardly do much at all.
Yeah, I figured you were talking about Breaker Box's weapon.
Yeah, Breaker Box's little lifter, sheet metal, man.
Yeah,
Bloodsport knocks it off,
whatsoever.
And then Breaker Box dies.
It just dies, like, pretty quick as well. Like, it took a while for the actual knockout, but it seemed like after like 2 or 3 hits, Breaker Box's drive was just dead on one side, and they were flailing that lifter around like, I'm alive. Not really, but don't count me out. And then they got counted out. And
well, then Bloodsport went over there and knocked the other half of that thing off.
Yeah, it's just a boring fight with a boring robot in it. Another robot that I had high hopes for, but it's not this season's Ice Wave at all. It's just a poor imitation of it, I think.
Yeah, I'd have to say this fight and, you know, Fight 5 and the Fight 3, Railgun Max versus Wandu were both really weak.
What, and you didn't think the next fight was weak, Whiplash versus Texas Twister? Because I did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really disappointed in Texas Twister. I want them to be better.
Yeah.
But they're not.
I mean, like, their design is just objectively good, and yet they continually underperform.
I'm not sure
in, like,
if I agree
fight.
with their design being objectively good.
I mean, it's a big horizontal, a single tooth flywheel. That's a lot
Man,
of
they
energy.
don't perform.
It's a lot of energy and a lot of engagement, but yeah.
Matt Vasquez was all over him.
He didn't even need to be either. Like hit one, pretty much. Texas Twister was dead. Like 8 seconds in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have nothing more to say.
I mean, I liked him yelling, "Don't mess with Texas," but man, he didn't come through.
Texas got messed with.
Oh, it did.
They messed with the bull, but didn't get the horns.
Exactly.
Actually, whoa! Now that I just remembered in episode 2, Whiplash fought Minotaur. The title of that episode was "Mess with the Bull, You Get the Horns," and that was another fight where they messed with the bull and didn't get the horns because Minotaur wasn't working for shit in that fight.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Whiplash just has a free pass to mess with Texas all at once, or Brazil. That's all I have to say. I'm just gonna just move on to the next one.
Texas Twister never got going.
Yeah, just move on to the next one.
Weapon died, started smoking, lit on fire. Boom, that's it.
Yeah. But now...
Oh, and by the way, their drone, the little flying around drone, that's stupid.
Drones are bad and they should feel bad. There's no
That's
point
stupid,
in it. That
man.
was actually Sub-Zero's drone from
Unless
last
they
year.
put a camera on that and a microphone and we got to watch some shit from a good angle. Other than that, it's stupid.
Well, actually, they did that for one fight last season, which was in the first episode. It was Huge versus Sub-Zero, which is funny because, like, I was just telling... I couldn't really say it because you were still talking, but... that's actually Sub-Zero's drone from last year, Spitfire, that they're using, Texas Twister. And the one fight they did it in had Sub-Zero in it, and it was fighting Huge. And Huge is in the next fight we're going to talk about. There's just all kinds of coincidences today.
Well, did it do anything?
Well, no. It pretty quickly accidentally ran into one of Huge's wheels and just got stuck on the floor. But, yeah, drones aren't even good even when they're trying not to get hit.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of
Drones
Huge,
are good for filming.
No, they're not. No, they're not because they crash. They're not,
Drones are good for filming.
well, they're good for filming static shots of like mountains and cars and stuff, but not robot combat. But speaking of Huge, it's time for the Mega Chungus. Huge versus Bronco. This fight again was the best fight of the episode. It wasn't great, but it was really good. And Bronco did a lot better than I thought they were going to, but they still ultimately just got their ass kicked, I thought.
When you say a lot better than you thought they were going to do, I mean, they didn't really do that good. In the middle of the fight, they were flipping them a little bit, but it didn't do anything. You know, I mean, I wanted them to beat the shit out of Huge, but they didn't.
You're a Huge hater.
Well, I'm becoming less of a Huge hater, I will admit.
Good.
I will admit.
I'm fine.
Although, for the record, I don't like the Huge team at all.
What?
No.
What?
I don't like them popping off and yelling stuff across to the other guy at all.
Oh, he was talking to himself. He was like,
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't talking to himself.
If your opponent's running away the whole time, I think you have the right to be like, hey man, come on, fight me. I did love how
what I'll say is, it's not a good look on TV.
Look, I'm fine with the idea of you not liking Huge, but I'm not okay. I won't accept that you would still be able to say it's a bad robot.
Well, it might not be a bad robot.
Yeah, like I said last episode, it just invalidates.
I'd like
so
to
many
see somebody
designs.
chew their wheels right off, though. Although, I will say, I mean, I can see where going up against them is harder than I thought it would be initially.
Yeah, because you
But
can't.
man, I really thought nobody gets on their side good. It's like there, and then they don't take advantage, and then it's gone. You got to be anticipating and then attack. I mean, you can't just. I don't know, man. I'm not.
I mean, I say Bronco did better than I thought they would. You know how I thought they would do? Okay, so
Really
they
bad.
They have that thing called the unicorn horn on the front, which I wasn't expecting, and it was really solid. It held up to direct hits.
It did.
In their post-fight report, Huge referred to it as the wizard hat, which is a way better name. Like seriously, unicorn horn. Like when I heard that, I just rolled my eyes and was like, "Oh my word!" Like think of names for that thing. What's the first thing that comes to your head? Unicorn horn. Okay, I'll write that down. Moving on. It's like Transformium from Transformers 4 or Unobtainium from Avatar. It's just the dumbest thing. Wizard hat's way better, so I'm going to call it that. That wizard hat allowed them to do more than nothing, which is what I thought they were going to do in this fight. But they did stuff, I guess.
They did stuff. I would agree with that. Well put. They did some stuff.
They
and in the middle of the fight, they did. But man, it didn't do anything.
It didn't do anything. No.
But they, in the beginning, in the middle of the fight, they were holding their own, at least looking presentable. They also seemed to just move right into the weapon.
There was a moment
I don't think they drive real well.
No, they didn't. They kind of were running away from most of the fight.
Well,
destroying any
I'm
aggression points they
okay
could possibly
if you're,
score.
A boxer that's moving to get an attack, but they just moved and didn't attack well. So then you get accused of running.
They really didn't. And they were running. But
they were.
There was a moment where I suddenly realized Broncos should be able to just flat out win this, even if they don't manage to really damage huge. And it's by just flipping them over and over. And the reason I realized that, and Jonathan Schultz actually pointed this out too, I wasn't sure until he did, because there's a moment where Huge's weapon is at full speed, completely spun up to 235 or whatever it spins at, full power, and Bronco runs directly into the weapon, and the weapon stops dead. They don't even push Bronco back at all.
Right.
And then Bronco gets a flip in, and then after that moment, Bronco just runs away for the whole fight, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
After they didn't
attack properly.
After they did that, if I were Reason Bradley, and I was like, hey, I can run directly into his weapon face on and not take damage.
Yeah.
I totally.
By the way,
this.
not sideways.
Not sideways.
You can't take it. You need to go straight in on them.
I
I just think Bronco didn't drive well, didn't attack well. I'm okay if you move out of the way or essentially run, but come in, attack. But they didn't do that well.
Yeah, they really didn't. And you know what's interesting? We've talked about Huge's inability to knock out opponents. It turns out that they actually did, in fact, kill Bronco with their last attack right before the time ran out. There was no count out because it was too late, but Bronco's drive was dead. They did get something important in there.
Yeah.
And it looked like Bronco was on fire because there was a big orange light on the inside. That's just their control lights flashing like crazy on the inside of the machine.
They certainly beat him up the last 30 seconds, man.
Yeah, they did. And it's weird. The show desperately tries to convince us that this was a close fight, even though it was very clearly going to be Huge's victory.
Yeah. If I was scoring this fight, at first I thought I'd score it 5-2, but really I think I'd have scored 6-1 at the best.
Yeah, Bronco
I don't
didn't
think
do
it
a
was
whole lot.
completely 7-0, but there could be an argument made for that.
It was nowhere near close, for sure.
It was not any better than 6-1. No. Even though, it looked like they were doing some stuff in the middle, it wasn't much. It wasn't much, no. Whereas, Huge hit him hard, granted, you're right, man. Straight on, they stopped him,
Yeah.
They should have taken advantage of that when they got underneath them, and they didn't really do anything that time.
Yeah.
So.
The Huge team themselves...
Does Bronco at all make it in the top 16?
Of course not.
I don't think so either.
They're going to lose to Hydra. We all know this.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
They're going to lose to Hydra. If they don't, it's not as clear cut as this fight.
I don't like it when you predict the next fights, honestly. I don't think that's right. I don't think you should do that.
What? Everybody does that. What are you talking about?
Well,
who do you think is going to win the next fight?
Well, okay. If you're going to ask me that, I guess I do think that Hydra's going to win the next fight. But
so what are you talking about?
Well, my point is, right now, not what you think is going to happen in the future, but right now, do they make it in the top 16? I say no.
I'm thinking that based on pedigree, and maybe if they win the next fight, they may qualify for the Last Chance Rumble, which I'm sure they have a way better shot in than a lot of the other machines that are going to be there. I think maybe Kraken's going to be there, or probably Railgun Max. If I was right about my prediction there.
I'm
okay with probably not Railgun Max.
I'm okay with your reputation
Minotaur?
getting you into something like a Last Chance qualifier, because past success means stuff.
Yeah,
it does.
It's effectively a wild card.
Right.
Yeah,
but they're 0-3, man. They don't deserve anything right now.
They don't deserve an automatic entry.
No,
not at all.
And really, even if they were to, I don't know, man. Even if they were to whip or win against Hydra, let's just say win. I'm not sure that's enough either. Now, whip Hydra, completely kick the shit out of them.
Flip them out of the arena in the
That's
first 10
different,
seconds.
maybe, but they haven't performed well,
No.
And then with some big breaks of their titanium flipper, it's just, I don't think they should make it in, man.
Yes. What was also weird about this fight was that, I should probably keep talking about the closeness of the fight. I mean, it's worth pointing out Huge's team was very convinced that they were going to lose this because, during the
Really?
fight. Well, because, while you're in the fight, you perceive it a lot differently. And you tend to remember the bad stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And they said, we thought we were getting flipped around a lot more than we were. We were really surprised when we actually saw it on TV, and we were like, well, they only flipped us 3 times. I remember it being a whole bunch of 2 solid minutes where we were at their mercy. But
it's like giving a presentation. You remember your mistakes. You remember the things you feel you messed up. But most times people don't even notice those things.
Yeah, Bronco ended this fight with the equivalent of ending a presentation by saying, yeah. But yeah, this was not at all a close fight, and I'm shocked that Kenny and Chris were trying to say, I have no idea who's going to win this. It might have been Huge. And I'm just like, of course it's Huge. Of course it's Huge.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But anyway, wow, we're already almost done. It's not even 45 minutes in.
You know what, Ben? They didn't give us much to talk about. And
really
that's the reason we didn't.
I would like to talk about Huge's weapon direction as well, though. First of all, another weird thing about the commentary in this fight, they were saying in a in a shocking move, a strategic thing, Huge has decided to spin their weapon upward. The direction they usually spin it.
No, I thought you told me their direction was normally downward.
No, their direction is normally upward. It's just that against full body spinners, they spin it forward. Because that helps them get downward strikes on the weapon.
You told me
axle.
they spin it downwards.
No. They usually
you
spin
berated
upward.
me and said that you should
Berated
always swing downwards. And I'm thinking, I think an uppercut would be better. And you explained to me why that wouldn't be a good idea.
Did I actually already say that in the last episode? Because I was saving that rant for this episode. Hold on. I don't remember saying that at all.
Well, it wasn't in the last episode, but early on when I talked about these larger, I guess it might have been Huge, I'm not sure though, swinging, their weapon upward, you told me it needs to be downward.
No, I said that against full body spinners like Gigabyte because they can hit the top and jam up the thing. If they spin it upward, they're just going to glance off the side every time. Because Gigabyte's effectively a wedge that's also spinning. Okay. They would have no chance in that fight.
Well, I mean, are you saying that, Kenny and Chris saying that this was a tactical move to switch the direction of the weapon was a joke? Because
it was just weird.
I didn't see it that way. I saw it as exactly how they said it, man. I thought it was a smart move just to do an uppercut.
Oh, yeah, it was. But, the thing is, it's if you're going to literally do what you usually do, you can't call it a smart tactical decision. It's Tombstone's gonna do a spin trick. How tactical. That's literally what they do every time.
Huge is what, 2-1 now?
3-1.
Coming into this fight.
Coming into this fight, they were 2-1.
Okay, so now
they're
they're 3-1.
They're in the top 16.
So in 4 fights, what direction did that?
They spun it forward against Son of Waiachi.
Down,
yes.
in other words.
But of course, their weapon was taking 20 seconds to spin up because they had their belt tension.
And they got beaten that fight.
Yeah, they had their belt tension
the
wrong. They still did a lot of damage to Son of Waiachi, though. They were very unbalanced at the end.
So that's one downwards.
And then their next fight, they spun it upward against Jasper.
Okay.
Yeah. Then against Gigabyte, they spun it forward again.
All right.
And in this fight, they spun it backward.
So I don't think you can say that they. In fact, coming into this fight, it had been 2 down and 1 up.
But think about this as well, though. Last season, and also when they run the featherweight version of Huge, they always spin it upward. Son of Waiachi and Gigabyte are the only 2 times they've ever spun it forward ever.
Okay.
But what I wanted to say about next about that is that, and this is going to sound really weird at first, but hear me out. I can hardly think of any possible scenario where spinning it backward is better.
Do you mean uppercuts?
Uppercuts, yeah. I can't think of hardly any scenarios where uppercutting is better, because when you're a vertical, right?
See, you're once again saying exactly what I told you. You've already told me. You already told me exactly what this is, that you should always swing it downwards.
Only with Huge, though. Not with something like Death Roll or Witch Doctor.
Okay.
So hear
Huge,
me out.
in your opinion, should always be a downwards stroke.
Yeah. And here's why.
That's what you've told me already.
Really? Was it off air or was it?
No, I think. Well, I'll look them up. I'll look through the episodes and try to find it.
I mean,
Keep going, please.
I'll cut all of this out. I'll just...
it's okay, man. Keep going, please.
Okay. Well, anyway, think about think about a vertical, right? They're better than horizontals in terms of energy transfer because when they strike upward, they are planted against the ground, and the other guy just goes flying, and you basically don't move, right? If you have no feeder wedge, though, like Death Roll or Witch Doctor, you're a lot more likely to strike while the teeth are swinging forward, and thus you're effectively a horizontal now at that moment because you both get pushed apart, right? And that's what Huge does as well, especially because its weapon is so large, is that it's going to always swing like a golf club almost, where it's going to hit you at the very lowest point and push itself back and probably push you back. And if you have a wedge on your robot, like Rotator, for example, if they fight Rotator, they're going to be hitting that wedge every time and just kind of glancing off probably. It's not going to be as effective as Death Rolls was because Death Rolls has a smaller radius. Huge is much larger, which is kind of a bad thing when you don't have a feeder wedge, right? Now think of a robot that has an exposed weapon mechanism on the top and an unbreakable front and sides. Like if they fight Shatter, for example. Big hammer, but ridiculous armor on the front and all that. What is Huge supposed to do against them if they are in the uppercutting mode? Nothing. They're going to hit that front, and it's going to stop their weapon dead, probably, and not really do much of anything, and leaving Shattered open to just hit them with the hammer. But if their weapon is spinning forward, that means that they could potentially...
Down, I would say a downward versus an uppercut.
If it's spinning downward, then they could potentially use the weapon to climb up the wedge and strike the top of the hammer mechanism and still deal good damage everywhere else along the way. Same thing with Bronco. They could potentially climb over Bronco with the weapon spinning downward and just hammer the top. Probably still take out that armor on the top, the big titanium panels that protect them, like they actually did. And then now imagine that they're fighting any given horizontal spinner, like not just a full body spinner, but let's say they're fighting Tombstone, right? They're probably going to pick a weapon bar that's too short to go weapon to weapon with Tombstone, right? They're going to still be able to get really good hits on the nose and also on the body, probably take out the wheels. They're probably going to win that fight, honestly, if they fight Tombstone. But here's the problem. Even if their weapon bar is too short to touch Tombstone's weapon, if they are spinning upward and they land a hit, one of two things, and probably both of them, is going to happen. The first is that when they hit, their body is going to be pulled down a little bit, like the wheels squish, the body lowers, and then their still spinning weapon bar dips low enough to be sideswiped by Tombstone's bar, which is very bad for them. It might just break the weapon bar. And then scenario 2 is that they're spinning upward, they get a hit, and then the horizontal spinner gets lifted up high enough to hit their weapon bar, right? Because they get kicked back by the force of the hit. But if they're spinning forward, like down, they're going to strike the top of the weapon frame and just lift themselves up over their horizontal spinning opponent and just completely avoid a hit altogether and still do lots of damage to the weapon frame and probably take out the weapon in a few hits. So I really can't think of much of any scenario where spinning up is better. That's just my 2 cents on the whole thing. Yeah.
You've thought about this before.
Yeah, like I was really thinking
pretty much exactly the same speech you gave me. I mean, not speech, but exactly the same description. Well, it's okay. You've given. I'm pretty sure in another episode.
Really?
I'm pretty sure, man. Because you just said exactly what I said you've been saying.
Yeah.
You know, not trying to be like, oh, you've been saying that, but I mean, that's your point. You think Huge should always be a downward blow.
Yeah.
You might be right. I don't know, man.
I don't know. I mean, obviously the team knows better than I do. I'm not trying to tell them what to do.
Well, they probably know better than you. I don't know that that's obvious.
They've been doing this a lot longer.
Well,
so
they are in it.
They are in it. They have literally.
And we're
done
talking
this.
About it.
Yeah, we're just. Hey, we're gonna be there next season, though, right?
I think so.
We're gonna get tickets.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. That's all I have to say. How about you?
That's pretty much all I got to say too, man. I think we're going to need to talk to the sponsors about maybe getting the studio air conditioner fixed.
Yeah, it's very, very warm in here.
It's a little ridiculous.
Yeah. Well,
I think maybe next week we should have the management crank the AC down to like 60 for maybe 2 days before the start of the taping of the podcast.
Put a bunch of insulation all over the walls so that it keeps that same temperature.
I think the sponsor would probably love that.
It is hot as hell in Texas right now, everybody. Oh my goodness. Like,
all right, man. Well,
well, I guess that's all there is to say.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Pretty short episode, yeah.
Thanks for everybody. Thanks for everybody tuning in.
Yeah.
See you guys next week.
Yeah. See you guys next week. It's great being here, and hope everybody has a good night.
Later.